Welcome to today's webinar. We are really excited that you are here. If you've been here before, welcome back. Always a pleasure. And if this is your first webinar, we are excited to share with you today's topic, to share with everybody who's attending on how you can search for remote jobs that are a good fit for you. While we give everybody a little bit of time to get settled into Big Marker, feel free to share where you are joining from in the chat box. It looks like some of you already started to do that. As you know, we like to ask this as we start, and it is one of my favorite things to see where people are joining from. Generally, we have people from multiple continents, so that's always really great. And as you all are doing that, I do want to go over a couple of items about how this webinar works and what you can expect going forward. If you have a question, we will be having a Q&A portion of the presentation at the end. So please be sure to put those questions in the Q&A section of Big Marker. That way you can see everyone else's question. You can give a question that you are also curious about a thumbs up. So we can help prioritize what questions are the most popular based on people giving those upvotes. The chat is a great area for you to say where you're joining from, to connect with other folks, other attendees who are on the webinar. But any questions that we answer at the end of the presentation will be found in the Q&A section, or we'll use that as a guide. We are recording this webinar, and we will be sending you a link to the recording and any resources that we cover as we go through the presentation. So you should have that within a couple days, get sent to the email that you use to sign up for this webinar. And speaking of recordings, this webinar has been pre-recorded, but the Q&A portion is live. So there will be a live career expert here to answer those questions at the end. So without further ado, it looks like we've got plenty of people here and ready to go. Why don't we dive in and cover the topics? Or let me introduce you to the topics we're going to cover today. We will start by talking about the skills that you have, how important and how to identify transferable skills and your remote friendly skills that we know that flexible and remote employers are looking for. We'll talk about how you can find those opportunities that could be a good fit for you. And also, there are some things that you can do beyond the traditional, look for a job and a job listing to really help maximize your job search efforts. So we want to go through those tips and tricks as well. And then, as promised, a Q&A as we wrap up the content. We will have some time to answer questions. But let's go ahead and get started looking at identifying transferable and remote friendly skills. So I want you to think about the remote friendly skills you might already have so that you can then incorporate those skills along with any transferable skills onto your resume and cover letter. So first, let's consider thinking about the skills you already have that make you a good or great remote worker. Time and time again, when FlexJobs and Remote.co surveys remote employers, these skills are the most consistently noted as highly important for candidates to have and to bring to the table. So first and foremost, verbal and written communication skills. Working remotely requires a very strong written communication ability because a lot of the work that you're going to be doing is likely through digital platforms like email or Slack or some other platform like that where you might be writing back and forth, as well as, verbally through either video calls or audio calls when you're having meetings. So having a strong sense of communication skills is really important, just like time and task management and like self-motivation and self-initiative, right? You've got to be able to, if you are working remotely or on your own within a company and on a team, have to be able to be productive and to get the work done, setting boundaries for yourself and to be able to really show that you can take initiative and reach those goals. With remote work, and we kind of circle back to communication a little bit, you have to be proactive, ask questions if you're not understanding something. You also have to communicate very clearly if there's something that you are struggling with or having an issue with in terms of your work or any project that you are working on. So being able to have a comfort and a proactive level of communicating is really important to employers. Remote work requires the use of technology, and you don't need to be a tech expert on everything to be a good remote employee, but you do have to be comfortable with a computer, with some digital communication tools. And of course, those vary across organizations, but you will be using technology when you work remotely. Having a growth mindset, embracing change, and a willingness to learn new things is something that is important to illustrate, demonstrate, and talk about when you are getting into remote work or looking for another remote job. And along with the technology, of course, specific digital communication tools you will want to be aware of and have a good understanding of. And again, those vary across industry and across job postings. And so, really diving in and looking at the job posting to know what tools might be at the top of the industry that you are in will help you determine which digital communication tools you want to be most familiar with. So I've got some samples that can be incorporated on the summary and key skills section that is at the top of your resume. And this part of your resume is easily updated and should be updated every time you apply for a job based on the keywords and critical skills listed in the job description, and then sprinkled throughout your resume as well. So you might say something like skilled at team collaboration while working within distributed teams and remote environments. You may mention being a versatile team player with exceptional written and verbal communication abilities. And finally, let's talk about technology savvy with an inherent ability to multitask and communicate effectively on Teams, in person, and remote environments. So really there with these 3 examples, incorporating some of those key remote friendly skills that we know employers like to see in the candidates that they choose from for the role they're looking to fill. I also promised we would talk about transferable skills. And you may ask yourself, what are transferable skills? So let's dive in and talk about it. But as noted on the slide, transferable skills are any skills that are valuable to employers and transfer over multiple industries and organizations. I'm willing to bet that many of the skills you use in your current job can likely be used in a new career field or in your next job that you are aiming for. Some examples like communication skills, leadership qualities, and time management abilities are skills that are easily transferable into other areas. And these skills are important to include on your resume and will often help with the transition into a new role. So, how do we go about identifying your specific transferable skills? Start by asking yourself the questions that we have on the slide. And I'm going to ask these slowly because I really want you guys to start thinking about this. And I'm going to go silent for a few seconds so that you can either jot this down, feel free to share this in the chat area if you would like. Or type it on your computer. But really part of this is identifying these skills. You've got to really dive in and dig deep to discover these. So number 1, what are you insanely good at? All right. Number 2, and maybe you just write down the first 1 or 2 skills or words that come to your mind after we ask these questions, but that at least will help you get started brainstorming. What strengths have you refined over time? All right, number 3, What do you end up doing in any role, regardless of the industry or regardless of the role? What are your go-to to-dos? And finally, what kind of problems do you like to solve? All right, so hopefully you started to feel a little bit of inspiration and invigoration on being able to work through some of these questions. If not, that's okay. There are other ways to identify these skills. You might want to think of them as your strengths and then try focusing on the strengths that you have that you would enjoy doing every day. Maybe it's something that you ask yourself, what skills or strengths do I want to leverage in my next role? Looking at it this way could help you develop confidence and really visualize career bridges or career pivots as you begin exploring these new opportunities. Another way that you could identify these skills if you're having a difficult time is to explore some skills assessments through organizations like careeronestop.org, the Skill Matcher. This helps you identify your most common workplace skills. And this link for the Career One Stop will be included in the resources too, so you'll have that. Okay. So part of this process we've started, right? We're asking ourselves important questions to identify our transferable skills. The next part of this is to demonstrate those transferable skills. So how in the world do you take the skills that you have that are transferable and demonstrate that on your documentation? All right, so first, you're going to start by taking really a fine-tooth comb to the job postings description. As you look it over, keep a notepad and pen next to you and jot down the words and requirements that are repeated or stand out on one side of the page. Or you can highlight them. Take that list of core skills the company wants from applicants for that specific role, and then compare your skills and experience on the other side of the page to identify which of your current job skills or strengths are transferable and should be showcased on your resume. So you're going to analyze the job description, highlight the skills you have. All right, so let's look at this job description. Now, I will say this job description that we took from our site was broken out into a requirements section. Sometimes this section might be called qualifications. Sometimes it might be called skills and abilities. There are different names that organizations will give to this part, but these are usually the main requirements that the job is looking for or the company is looking for somebody in that role. So the first one says 4 or more years working directly with customers to resolve technical issues. All right. So if you have experience problem solving, if you have customer service experience too, and you are really good at working on de-escalating issues that might get escalated, that's likely a transferable skill for you. Comfortable troubleshooting problems. So again, we're talking about problem solving and troubleshooting, which is a really transferable skill. Strong communication and collaboration skills, again, is something that you could think about if you are doing within your role right now, that is a transferable skill that you might be able to demonstrate.
Not sure I understand.
Strong attention to detail. So if you have any examples of attention to detail in your current role, this might be something you can pull out on your information when you apply. And the last part that's underlined, prior experience with startups or a high level of flexibility and comfort in a loosely structured environment. All right. So how do you take these things that you've underlined that that you have and get that to your resume. And that really can be the tricky part. And it can take a couple different iterations before you feel like you get it right. So don't get frustrated when you're going through this process. Really take the time to dive in and work through what this might look like. So in an interview, of course, you have more unlimited space to talk about your transferable skills because you have time, right? But that's not the case on a resume. You really have to keep your points brief and on target, on point, if you will. So consider using the STAR method to explain how your transferable skills will benefit the employer. Really, employers want to know how you've used those skills, and this is where you prove that. So STAR, for those of you that don't know or maybe haven't heard of it, we use this for behavioral interviews as well, but STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. So on your resume, describe a situation you faced. Maybe you're talking about a customer escalation. Identify the task that you had to finish. Describe the actions you took, and explain the results you've achieved. And you want to try to make this as measurable as possible because employers love percentages, they love numbers, they love dollars, money you've saved and things like that. So you can play around with how you write these bullets. And some of you might be thinking, well, that seems like it's going to be a really long bullet. And I didn't think bullets on resumes were supposed to be long. And that's correct. You don't want to be writing paragraphs about this. And that's why I think when you first sit down to do this, you might have a bullet that looks like it's going to be 2 or 3 sentences. And then what you need to do is go back in and edit that and pare that down so you can have a concise bullet that really shows the results and accomplishments that you have using that skill that is transferable to the role. Okay, so we've identified our remote friendly skills. We're diving into and leaning into what skills we have that are transferable. And once you've done that, the next step is to begin searching for new opportunities based off of those transferable and remote friendly skills. And one good way to use this or to do this is to use advanced search features on job boards. So the goal of most advanced search filters is for you to sort through thousands. Those of you that have looked at job boards know that there's thousands of open jobs in a small amount of time. So this will really help you search in a way that feels smarter, that is smarter and not harder. Okay. There could be over 20,000 positions listed on any given day on the FlexJobs site. So with the advanced search option, you have greater control in finding opportunities that might be a better match based off of your transferable and remote friendly skills. So this is going to give you more time, more time to devote to tailoring your resume and cover letter to the identified opportunities found through the advanced search filter. Because what you can do by using the advanced search filter is you don't have to focus only on position titles. In fact, we encourage you to use some of these other strategies. Searching by some of these transferable skills that you've identified or any soft skills that you have, any personal attributes that you bring to the table. If there are some industry specific skills, or hard skills that are really important in the area that you work. And of course, technology platforms, So if you are really good at using Salesforce and also public speaking, you could do a search that said Salesforce plus public speaking. And on the FlexJobs site, it would run results for any job that is posted on the site that mentions both public speaking and Salesforce. Okay. So you might also do something like writing plus research plus collaboration. Using symbols like the plus sign will help find jobs that incorporate both of those words or both of those phrases. And you can also use a dash to remove specific words or phrases. So for example, if you are looking for jobs and feel like most of the job postings that you are seeing require a bachelor's degree and you haven't completed yours yet, or you don't have one because you have work experience in lieu of, go ahead and type in a keyword like research and then the dash and the words bachelor's degree, and you should get a search that has jobs that don't require a bachelor's degree. I'm going to put a little asterisk on that comment though, because you still might find jobs that require a master's degree unless you also take out the word master's. So, and of course, if it requires a master's degree, you would need a bachelor's degree. So it may not be 100% perfect, but it would also show you jobs that do not specifically mention a bachelor's degree in the job description. All right, so advanced search filters can be a really useful tool to hone in on finding jobs that meet your skill set, your strengths, and of course, those transferable skills. Other search options that are helpful to include to give your job search your full attention or a full throttle approach is to incorporate some other unique things or things that you might not think of right away. So this might be called more of a backdoor approach to job searching. But one of the things that is really critical is to look at and explore and research companies. That can really give you a lot of really helpful information. Specifically on the FlexJobs site, we have a jobs and companies page with over 57,000 companies that gives you free access to a company description, links to the jobs that they have open right now on the FlexJobs site, as well as links to any of their social pages or their actual website. And when you use the FlexJobs researching companies page, you can search by different lists that we've curated, like the top 100 companies hiring for remote work in 2023. You can even get more specific and search by the top companies hiring for remote work in your specific state. You also could look by different industries. So the top 100 companies with project management jobs or nonprofit jobs. So these are some other areas that you can consider when you're working through your job search. You can also think more broadly as you start to explore, because that will help you generate additional options. It will help expand your research area. And then what you can do when you dive into some of that research is really pare down from there. A couple other resources that you might want to utilize that could capture a full view of companies that you might want to target are places like LinkedIn for company presence and future networking opportunities. Also, Glassdoor may have some current and former employee reviews that can be a good addition to the research that you're gathering for a specific company. All right. So now let's talk about going beyond the job listings so you can create your own momentum to move your job search forward. Consider cultivating connections through networking. And I mentioned networking just on the previous slide really briefly. But from these connections and relationships, you might be able to find positions that would not have otherwise become in your periphery or that you would become aware of. This is where the term or the hidden job market may become visible and accessible to you through networking opportunities. It's estimated that a whopping 80 to 90% of open positions in the United States aren't actually listed anywhere. And it really comes down to who you know, and people are getting into those roles through their network and through the connections that they have. So, what are some basic networking tips for you to get started? And then there are other, layers to this that you can explore in future webinars for sure. But first and foremost, grassroots networking you want to consider this, and it really means it's going beyond professional networks. So start talking to your personal network, like your family, your friends, and your neighbors. Again, they all have their own network, right? So if you're not already connected to them on a platform like LinkedIn, be sure to reach out to them and begin exploring the work they do, their companies, and their other connections. You can start reaching out and messaging them, and that can lead to growing your network through their connections. Informational interviews are another great networking strategy, and they can be conducted in person, on the phone, via email, or of course, a video or web chat platform. And this is really just to keep in mind, it's much more of an information gathering meeting rather than a promise of a position, but it can be highly beneficial for you to gather and gain knowledge that will help you make informed decisions while you are pursuing opportunities that fit you. And so that is a strategy that can be very beneficial, particularly if, as you're looking for a new job, you're looking to do somewhat of a career pivot or a complete career change. All right. So how do you use LinkedIn searches to identify someone you might know on the platform? You can find this in the top of LinkedIn in the upper left search box. You can type in a company name. You can then go to the company LinkedIn page and click See All company name. In this case, we use United Health Group or employees. And on LinkedIn, that will show you if you have any extended connections. It might show you, well, it will show you if you have a first degree connection and second degree and third degree. If you don't have any connections, you can reach out to somebody for an introduction, and you can use search filters within that people category to identify people that maybe went to the same school as you, to identify people that might live near where you are, even if it's a remote job. So there are some other opportunities there as well. You could reach out or consider sending your message to someone that might be a manager of the department where you are applying to, or maybe the in-house recruiter if it's a big enough company and you can identify that person. But here's an example on the slide of how to craft a message based off of a mutual connection. You always want to add a note, of course, and you might say something like hello and the name of the person. Our mutual connection, the name of the person, recommended I reach out to you because I'm applying for a position with your company, Global Services. That's the name of the company. I'd love to hear about your experience working there and if you have any advice for my application or who else I should connect with. I appreciate your time very much. So that might be, it's short, simple, sweet. You're not asking for a lot, and it gets you to a point where you are making an introduction and making yourself known as a candidate for a particular job. As I mentioned, informational interviews are an opportunity that may come from a new connection. This is where you can learn about the company, open positions, and a position you might be interested in applying for, or even positions that might be coming available soon. Essentially, as I said before, informational interviews are really information gathering sessions where you can learn about the company and also, conduct research to see if they might be a good match to your career goals. And I've just put on the slide some examples of how you could request the opportunity to conduct an informational interview. And keep in mind, 3 great questions to ask when in an informational interview might be something like, what do you enjoy the most about your job? What do you enjoy the least? And what surprised you the most about this job? We do have a resource on informational interviews that will be coming as well. So you will have that included in the recap email that we send out. But really briefly, one way you could ask for an informational interview is by saying, the more I read about your company and think about your mission, the more excited I get and attracted I am to all the amazing things you're doing. And the next part of that, please let me know if you have a few minutes to chat at some point in the next week or two. Or if it's easier for you to respond via email, that works as well. I've also attached my resume so you can see my background. Hoping to hear from you and thanks for your time. So that's one strategy. There are other options and things that you could include as well. But really, you want to introduce yourself, connect something to the company, something you're excited about, and then go from there. Okay, so what action should you take next? How do you start putting this into practice? Well, first, we'll just start with making sure that you know your remote friendly skills and your soft skills and transferable skills. Make sure you have a good handle on those. Write them down on a list. So whenever you're looking for a job or going through this process, reaching out to somebody, you can call in some of those key strengths that you have so that you can highlight that in every interaction that you have. Of course, you're going to demonstrate these skills on your resume. When you are looking for jobs, there are some things that you want to do to help you have forward progress and good momentum going forward. That is using the advanced search feature, researching companies, and then, of course, leaning into networking activities to really help accelerate and enhance your job search efforts. All right, so there is the presentation, and as a reminder, we'll be emailing the recording and resources shortly. But if you need some more information or have additional questions on other topics, please don't forget about the FlexJobs.com blog, where there are over 4,000 articles on any job search topic out there, and that's just a really great free resource for everybody. But I want to open this up to questions. So let's go ahead and get to the Q&A section and see what we've got.
Okay, hello everyone. This is Doug from FlexJobs coaching staff. Could you throw a hello Doug or something of that nature in the chat so I know that you folks can hear me? If somebody would do that, that would be helpful. Super. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. I see that you can hear me. Wonderful. Well, good. Let's jump over to the Q&A and see what we've got here for some questions, folks. We'll dive in and see what else we can learn. Okay, so aren't skills like time management just part of any job? I don't feel like they get me noticed. I'm 54 years old, and a nice smiley face there. Thanks for the question, Angela. I appreciate it. You know, yes, we could certainly assume that time management is part of a job, right? That we should be able to manage our time and manage ourselves in a role. We should assume that, right? And I do understand where you're going with that. But what I would say is that we can't assume that everybody has that particular skill, right? Or different people have it at different levels. Some people can do really good managing their time all on their own. They can work independently. They don't need somebody to give them direction. There are other people, and this is not to discredit them, but that do much better in an environment where somebody is consistently feeding them a list of tasks and things to do, right? It's just a different way that somebody might be wired in their particular way of approaching a job. And both of those may have different levels of strength or whatnot that they bring to the table. But yes, I do understand the question. Yeah, we should kind of assume that, but that does note a something that I think is important to note, right? We can say, well, goodness, shouldn't I just assume that everybody has time management and they should assume that I have time management? But what you'll notice is as you review job descriptions, you'll see that these types of things like time management or independent work or things of that nature come up as qualifications listed in the job description. So what that tells us is that employer or that hiring manager or that recruiter is thinking about that in terms of a qualification. This is something that they're targeting. And so it can be really helpful to note those and watch for those skills, even though we can say, goodness, I mean, we should assume that, you should assume that if I'm doing this job, I can manage my time. They may still be including that as a key qualification that they're looking for in the resume, either through an applicant tracking system that's scanning your resume for those keywords, or as a hiring manager when they open that up. So while we can, assume that those are skills that we should all have, or that a person in that particular role should have, I appreciate that. At the same time, we might want to note those because it's something that they're specifically looking for. So watch the job descriptions, look for those skills they're looking for, and make sure that you note those. All right. Are you able to list yourself as an expert in something without a degree or certifications to back it up? My goodness, this is a really good question. My answer is absolutely, without question. I want to note that definitely a degree or a certification in something can demonstrate a level of knowledge, no question about it. Sometimes if you've got certain types of certifications, you have to, really work in an area or a field or a discipline for a certain amount of times, clock hours, and things of that nature to be able to even qualify to apply for and to work through that certification and receive that certification. So I totally understand that, yes. In some cases, degrees and certifications can demonstrate a level of knowledge and even a level of a time and commitment and expertise and whatnot. However, being an expert comes from doing and results, and this is an important thing to keep in mind. When you have done something and you have generated good results, strong results in whatever field or whatever task or whatever function that is that you are doing, that can qualify you certainly as an expert. Now, what do we do with that? Let's just say we've got a resume and a cover letter, and we're applying for positions. And you may not have a degree in that particular field to list. This is where it becomes really important to clearly communicate on your resume the results to them, to really demonstrate that you are an expert. So if you have done something, talk about in your resume what you've done and the impact that that's had. So if you are an expert in project management, that you consistently turn in projects meeting milestones and deadlines under budget, and successfully implementing your projects or whatever, however you're going to do that, and give examples if you can, like 10% ahead of schedule, and 15% under budget, resulting in this kind of a result, right? So the more that you can demonstrate that and talk about that, the more that it's going to communicate that regardless of whether you have a degree or a certification, you are an expert in something because you've done it and you've displayed results over time. Okay, I have been working remotely for 10 years, and I'm finding it challenging to transfer my skills into a different field. I'm open to different opportunities, but I feel like searches aren't getting me noticed. Okay, there's really kind of maybe two parts to this question, at least the way that I'm reading it. Number one is this idea of transferable skills. And I think it's really important to think through what's kind of skills that I bring and the things that I do and have done that might transfer into other areas. And we've definitely talked about that in the webinar today. So I completely agree with that, right? So I can say, goodness, I'm really good at project management. I'm really good at whatever these other skills might be that I've done in one area and are applicable in another area. But one thing to maybe help you maybe get noticed more might be, number one, to really closely examine the job descriptions of positions that you are interested in, right? The things that you personally like to do or would want to do. And are there any skills or technologies that are consistently coming up in these types of roles that you could maybe develop? So maybe you've got this transferable skill of say project management, and you've managed projects in the past, but you consistently see a technology coming up that you've not used, and they may be looking for that. Well, this may be a time where you go out and you take a course on that particular technology. Maybe you go to an online training like Skillshare or Udemy or Coursera, or you go to LinkedIn Learning and you take some coursework on that. So you can not only demonstrate the transferable skills that you're bringing in, but your initiative to learn and to grow and to expand into this new area. And that's going to communicate a good growth mindset to these people that are looking at your resume. Or perhaps it's like you're applying into customer service and you haven't done that before. Go on to LinkedIn Learning or some other area and take a course on that. It allows you to be able to showcase those skills skills on your resume, which this comes to the second part as far as getting noticed. And I guess I will reiterate this again, that tailoring that resume, listing those things in your resume, making sure to watch what they're after and tailor your resume and your cover letter. And really, in today's job search, getting noticed is beyond just the resume and the cover letter. It goes into these other things that Tony was talking about as far as informational interviews, reaching out to people, learning how did you make that transition? How did you get into that field? What tips would you have for me as I try to go into this new field? Networking, reaching out to people in the organizations that you're applying to, and certainly following up on your applications once you've submitted those. So really it's kind of two pieces, right? It's displaying those transferable skills, looking for opportunities that you can pick up new skills or advance those skills in ways that communicates your ability to transition into that, but also being able to demonstrate that and display that in your resume. All right. Okay, I'm trying to return to a career that I did 25 plus years ago. How to prepare a resume that would show I'm ready to return to that field. Okay, so some similar things here in the sense of going out and getting some of those current training in that particular field. Demonstrate that even though you maybe have been doing something different for the last 25 years or how many ever years, to show them that you're current and you're learning and you've maybe got a new certification in that very field, and some of the efforts that you've been taking recently. Communicate that in your resume, maybe even bring that into the summary and the key skills section at the top of your resume to show that you're serious about this, right? That's point one. Number two is being a little careful with ageism, right? Now, and I'm an individual in my late 50s, right? So I'm not criticizing anybody about age, but ageism is a factor or can be a factor in some job search. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to probably want to streamline, and it's hard to say exactly without knowing your particular situation and seeing your resume and so on, but you're likely going to want to streamline that information about your recent career or your recent efforts and the things that you've been recently involved in. Maybe streamline that. If you've had a career break, you're going to want to note professionally active career break or intentional career break or active career break, so they understand what you've been doing recently. But then when you note that experience that's 25 plus years old, what you're going to want to do, I think, in that case, is definitely include that in something like a additional relevant experience or additional experience highlights or professional highlights, something of that nature. And so it's another section in addition to your professional experience section where you can showcase that experience you did 25 plus years ago. And in that particular section, you're going to want to be careful not to include dates. So what we're doing is we're letting them know that we've got this good solid experience. It's really applicable to what they're looking for, but we're being careful to not be in a place where it could could have some ageism in there, and that will help you to showcase that without bringing in those older dates. Can you give me an example of a star sentence in a resume? So a star sentence, just to recap that a little bit and refresh on that, is a sentence that is situation, task, action, and result. And so we want to demonstrate quantifiable things and qualifiable things where we can, that we've done this and here's a demonstration of it. We're good at this and here's how I've done this in the past. And so with regard to a star, it's situation, it's task, it's action, it's result. Tell them about a situation, tell them about the task or the action that you took, and demonstrate the results. So all of that to say something like this: uncovered process inefficiencies and developed and implemented strategic improvements that resulted in whatever. right? So what I'm doing is I've uncovered some process efficient. That's the situation. These process inefficiencies, and the action or the task and the action is I developed and implemented some strategic improvements, resulting in. So there's my action, and the resulting in result is, and you might talk about that. Resulting in 20% 20% faster turnaround in addressing customer complaints or something of that nature. So hope that helps. So think in terms of what was the situation, what action did I take, and what was the result, and get that in a nice, concise, bulleted sentence format. All right, well, folks, always good to be with you guys. We do appreciate having you here as part of these webinars. Just a reminder that a recording of this webinar, as well as the results, or excuse me, the resources that are included with this webinar, will be sent out to the email that you use to register for today's event. If you don't see it in your inbox, by all means, just check your spam folder. Sometimes they can end up over there. We just want to encourage you to, keep an eye out for other webinars that we have scheduled and that are coming up, and encourage you to be a part of those as well. On behalf of all of us here at FlexJobs, we just want to thank you for being a part of these webinars and being a part of the FlexJobs community. To all of you, have a great day and all the best in your job search.